Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I've been fired up about this episode because the guy that I have on has kind of been in my circle for the last couple years. And I can't believe I was telling him this before we got started, but I cannot believe it's taken so long for him for me to ask him to come on because he's got a great story. He's got an awesome family. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And so I'm really, really honored to have my good friend John Buckner on Dad Up. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks you. And with intros like that, I'll come on more often. That's awesome. No, I really appreciate it. I mean, I think we just through the power of social media stumbled upon each other, and I've just loved following you. And I continually get inspired from you and your podcast and your posts. So it's an honor to be on here.
Awesome. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, we have been social media friends for
Yeah.
quite a while. You've just recently in the last year or so moved to Arizona, which is a place that I frequent because my younger son goes to college there. So the next time we're there, we're gonna have to hit up and grab a bite to eat or something for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Take the social media to the real life, right?
Right, right. All right. Well, cool. Let me do this, John. For my listeners, viewers who don't know who you are, let's dive into a little bit of a backstory because I know you got kind of a story there, and I want you to share it. I want you to share not only your journey, but also kind of your testimony as to your family, your faith, all those areas. And then obviously this is a dad podcast, so I want to know about your kids as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much obviously with anybody's story. But going back kind of for the beginning for me, I was your typical church family kid. I have two older sisters. I was born and raised in the church. And growing up, man, people would have looked at our life and been like, that's the TV family, the perfect family. Growing up, I never felt like I had need or want for anything. My parents were very present. Honestly, like up until about 13, you'd look and be like, that's like the perfect childhood. We vacationed in the summers and winters and all the things that now I look back and be like, yeah, I was pretty spoiled. I had a blessed upbringing. And I'm sure we can dive into this more even later on, but at 13, all of that kind of came to a crashing halt. My dad, I say it to this day, was the greatest example of a Christian father, Christian husband, Christian man. Even to this day, is still that for me. But at 13, my world was rocked, and it shaped who I am today and continues to shape me. And at that, my father took his life, committed suicide when I was 13 years old, and that's when my perfect family kind of shifted, but it also has shaped who I am, how I parent, the husband I am, the man I am, and the passions I have today to speak into other men's life as they navigate trials and things. But all of that, going through high school without a dad and all those kind of things just kind of shaped the man I am. And then I worked in church ministry, vocational ministry for about 15, 16 years. That was where I met my wife at the first church that I worked at. We got married and we have 3 kids. We've been married now 15 years. 3 kids. My son Braden is 13, going into 8th grade. And then I have a daughter, Bree, who's 11, and my youngest daughter, Bryan, who is 8. So most of my days are filled with either a baseball or football practice or game, or my daughters play club softball too. So I'm at those softball events, or that's most our days center around, as they do with kids, navigating their busy schedules. But that's in a nutshell my life. My wife and I, we moved to Arizona about a year ago. And we have a health coaching business where we help people level up in their health. And that's what we've been doing, has brought us out here now. So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome.
But
Well,
that's a big nutshell.
yeah, thanks for sharing. I do want to, touch back on your story. Perfect childhood, parents involved, just kind of this perfect little home life, right? Then that day when you're 13 hits, how did you react to that? Because I know that obviously kids can respond to things like that differently. And I'm curious to know how you responded, because here you had a dad who was really involved. You looked up to him. He was your mentor, your guide. He was everything that you really wanted to be as a child. You really wanted to be when you got older. You wanted to aspire to be just like him. But then that happens for parents, or maybe a younger person, that maybe a late teenager or something that's listening to this, that may have lost a father or a mother who has died by suicide. What would you recommend, or how can you help them through this time?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a great question. Because one thing I noticed, like I said, I have two older sisters. And so after my dad made this choice, it's my mom, my two older sisters, and me. I'm the only male left in, my immediate family. And I noticed all of us reacted differently, which it's just so interesting, with personalities, with different dynamics of my oldest sister, who's about 6 or 7 years older than me. She had just finished her freshman year of college. And for about a month, maybe a little more, it was like she was the most angry person in the world. like anything would set her off. It was like, just don't leave her alone. And then after about a month, she was back to normal. Still grieving, obviously. You're still navigating a new normal, but kind of that was her process. She kind of got her anger out. She dealt with it. And then my normal sister was back. My middle sister kind of was the one who chose avoidance. And so she would not want to, for years, it'd be family holidays. She would never want to just stay and be. She'd kind of come to town and then go be with friends, like always had to be bouncing around, doing something different. And I think a lot of that is to kind of keep your mind off of the painful experience. And you just kind of bounce to new things. My response, I think, being the only boy in my family, the only male, my natural first response was to my mom and how she was doing. I just believe like males are naturally created with a protector mentality. I think it's our natural instinct to protect. And even at 13 years old, my thoughts were, man, how is my mom? How's my mom doing? And I remember immediately following, I felt obviously pain, obviously your world is rocked, but I never had moments of like anger towards my dad. It almost felt more, sympathy is not the right word, but almost felt bad, because I'm like, man, how heavy must have something been for you to do that? And then for my mom, how was she navigating this? And I'll say the biggest factors in my life that have kept me from probably becoming a statistic or doing other things that a lot of people who navigate this experience go through is there's a handful of men, 3 specifically, that throughout the course of my life played major roles. They stepped in. My best friend's dad, he was my best friend, and his parents were my parents' best friends. So our families did life together. He was a constant in my life till the day he passed away a few years back. He was a father figure. He walked my sister down the aisle when she got married. And so my youth pastor, to this day, I still have connection with him. And then there's a couple other men, but there's these men that intentionally stepped into my life. And when a lot of people, I've talked to different people who've navigated this, I've watched from a distance people navigate this. A lot of people turn on God and turn on the church. And I get that. I understand that. For me, the people in my church circle, they stepped to me, and it actually kept me connected to God, I think, instead of running away from that. And that became a source of peace for me. But one story with that too, I remember, so I'm going into 8th grade. I'm 13 years old when this happens. From the time I'm 8th grade till a senior in high school, not one person in my school setting ever mentioned my dad. Never asked me about it. Outside of like I was saying, my youth pastor, I'm talking teachers, friends, nobody brought it up. One time I'm in class, senior year of high school, probably halfway through, And a buddy of mine, good friend, like we weren't best friends, but friends. He said, "Hey, I had heard, I think he came to our school my freshman year. So he wasn't at the school when all this stuff happened. And he hears rumors. Hey, I hope this doesn't offend you, but did your dad do this?" And I kind of chuckled. I was like, "It doesn't offend me at all, man. It's cool that you asked." And I said, "Yeah." And we kind of had a conversation, but here's the thought that hit me. And I've said this before. If you've ever experienced this, or you have somebody who's experienced suicide, maybe it was a family member, maybe it was a close friend. The thing I always say is oftentimes we don't know what to say in those situations, because with suicide, it really, even if they left a note, even if they told you why they did this, there's so many unanswered questions, why somebody does this. And so you really never have the right answer. And I think when we don't have the right answer, we avoid asking the questions because we're afraid we don't know what we're going to say to this person who's gone through this. But the phrase I've always said is risk offending somebody, because I was so glad that guy asked me, because I went home that night and I'm like, at least somebody is thinking about me, because you feel very alone, like nobody else has experienced what you've experienced, and nobody ever talks about it because they don't know what to say. And it just taught me to be the person who risks offending somebody, because even if I would have got angry at him, even if I would have said, "I don't want to talk about that," I would have left going, man, at least somebody was thinking about me and the things I've had to navigate. And so one encouragement with somebody, maybe you have a friend, maybe you know somebody who's been through this, is reach out to them, talk to them, ask them how they're doing. They might not even say much, but be involved, because knowing somebody's thinking about you and cares about you, and even if they don't understand what you're feeling, just knowing somebody's thinking makes you feel like you're not alone, even though you've gone through this crazy trauma. And so that's one thing. And then navigating it myself is just being willing to allow people to come into your life to not replace a role somebody played, but fill a void that is needed. I needed a male figure. Nobody was going to be my dad, but I needed male figures to step into my life. And I think even though I didn't consciously do it, but allowing those people to be in my life really helped shape who I am, and probably keep me from a lot of things that could have been harmful.
Yeah. I think that it's important to talk to people when you, here's the thing. Let me back up a little bit, because there's something that I do regularly, and it may not be anything that anybody's going through, but I do this regularly. I reach out to people just out of the blue, just to check in. And I do that. I have a few people every single month, different people every single month that I just reach out to just via text and just say, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. Hope everything's well. Hope you're doing good. I just wanted to drop a note and say hi." Sometimes that's all it takes. For you, that was all it took, because as a young kid, you're keeping this bottled up because you don't know how to approach other people about it, right? And you're not really sure what to say, but you're keeping it bottled up, and that's not healthy. You really need to talk about it. Whether it's with a therapist or your pastor or your mom or your sisters, whatever the case may be, you really needed to talk about it and get those, get that feeling out of you. And for this kid to come up and just kind of approach you about it, obviously you felt good. You felt great that he did that, and it made you feel important, which is what you needed. So yeah, if there's anybody out there that's watching or listening to this, this isn't an episode about suicide. This is an episode about, the life and the struggles that we face, not only as kids, but even as adults. There's challenges that we face every single day. And how do we overcome that? And not only that, but how do we teach our kids how to overcome those things? But if you're struggling, if you're really going through something traumatic and you don't know how to escape it or how to get out of the situation, please reach out to somebody. Ask them for help. Ask them for support, because a lot of times people don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We see all this social media stuff that looks all great on social media, but in the real life, in their own real home, they could be struggling with something. So reach out to somebody if you're struggling with something. I'm just gonna leave that little note right there. Hopefully anybody that's watching this or hears this that's going through something, they'll reach out. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to John. You can reach out to anybody, but reach out to somebody that you know or somebody that you feel connected with, and let them help you, because I can guarantee you they will. All right. So off that little sidebar. Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to go one more question into this because it's an important topic, but I do want to kind of navigate into some other things. Here you are, a dad, 3 kids. You got a great home life. You got a great family. You have a great career. Your kids are adjusted to the new environment. Being in Arizona now, your kids are adjusted. They're happy. Everything looks great. But here you are at a point where your son is now the same age as you.
Yeah.
What kind of conversations do you have with your kids, or do you, about the thing that you went through? And what has been that? I'm just curious, what has been that conversation like with your kids?
Yeah, that's interestingly, my son is the same age I was when it happened, and I'm turning the same age my dad was when he did it. So it's like head on identical. But it's really cool to be in a situation where I can say we're changing that story, that narrative, where my dad, for whatever reasons, got to the point of giving up. We're able to push through and find things that have helped us grow and become better people and better dads. And so it's interesting. But yeah, with my son being that same age and how we navigate that, we've talked about, because just kids ask questions and you're kind of like, oh, I didn't know that question was coming. And it kind of becomes natural. And there's been times where, they have, on my wife's side, they have their grandma and grandpa, they have their great grandma and grandpa. On my side, they have grandma. And there's quite, where is, they call him Papa Mike. And, and we reference him and we talked about him. And so when my kids were younger, it was, yes, that, he's in heaven or he's not with us, but we love him and we tell stories. Now that my son's kind of getting older, I want him to know to an extent, and as they're ready for different conversations with that, because it is a heavy topic, obviously. But I want him to see how people make decisions and how our choices impact not just us, but other people. My dad's one choice, and just for reference, everybody has different stories. So with suicide, there's similarities, but then there's always differences, because every single story is different on why someone got to the point where that's the decision they made. For my dad, just backpedaling even in his life, he grew up in an extremely alcoholic home, to the point where he would step in and fight his dad so that he wouldn't beat on his mom, my grandma. He was a 3rd grader in elementary school, and he came home one day in tears because a 5th grader was kind of being a bully, just normal elementary stuff. And his dad kicked him out of the house at 3rd grade and said, you go out and show him not to bully you around. So at 3rd grade, he started fighting and literally fought. He grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Vallejo, California. And being that he was decent in sports, he'd have people come and essentially challenge him. And he'd have to fight, not just because he wanted to fight, but for survival. So he kind of grew up that way. So when he got successful in business and had a family, he said, I don't want them to ever experience what I have experienced. And when he got to the point of taking his life, it was because, as times do, we're living in times where the economy takes hits. And he, in his mind, he was the most generous man I've ever known. He would give anything to anybody. And when his business took a hit, he, in his mind, felt like, this is going to protect my family financially long term. It's going to take care of them. So that he, in his mind, thought he was doing the best for our family. Now, obviously, that was not the best choice. But with my son, we can talk about the power of personal responsibility, the power of your choices impact not just you, but your immediate family and future generations. My dad's choice is impacting his grandkids that he never met because of that one choice. And so when my son, being 13 and going into teenage years, where you get faced, I mean, our teenagers are faced with more decisions today than I could ever imagine when I was a teenager. And so to understand your decisions, they have, though they might be small and some might be not a big deal right now. Yeah, you might get in trouble and it's just a learning lesson, which actually is not a bad thing sometimes, to get in trouble and learn a lesson. but those decisions that you make have huge impacts, and they always impact more than just you, the people around you. And so we've had good conversations like that. And he'll ask questions, about them. But the crazy thing, and this is just the power, I think, of the influence of any parent, but dad specifically, obviously, is there's things my son will do. There's mannerisms and things he'll say that remind me so much of my dad. And they never met, right?
No, that's awesome.
It's crazy. But it just shows the power of, like, even if you didn't have a dad present your entire life, there's little things that just by nature of the DNA and you being a part of that, good or bad. I've noticed some bad things. My dad you talked about keeping things in and harboring all those things. I think men do that more than women anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Men are like, I can fix this. Give me some duct tape and a screwdriver and I'll figure it out. Like, all men think they're MacGyver in some sense.
Right.
But that was my dad. And that was a natural thing I picked up from my dad that actually has impacted our marriage, where I've had to learn, no, I've got to express what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, when I'm afraid, when I think I can't handle this, because my dad was, I'll take care of it. I'll provide for you. I'm going to do this all. My mom didn't have to worry about anything. I remember on our honeymoon, it was the first time I had to take care of checking us into a hotel. I kind of stood there with my wife and I was like, oh yeah, that's my job now, because my dad just always did those things for us.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I had to learn not to keep everything in because of how dangerous that is for anybody. The power of getting things out, talking about it. I mean, you take away such a fear and a stronghold when we just speak out those things that we're keeping in, and we allow other people to help us, because we all need help. So that kind of sidetracked from my son, but those are things that I can continue to start instilling in him as a result of learning about what his grandpa did.
I love it. I think that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, obviously you want to shelter your kids a little bit from, them feeling a certain way over this thing that you went through as a child, and knowing that their grandfather is no longer here for certain reasons. You want to shelter them from that. But I think on the flip side, letting them, like you talked about, letting them understand what happened and how it impacts everybody else, to help them understand that, yeah, sometimes the decisions you make in life, you might think would be a good decision for you, but you have to think outside others around you and understand how that would impact, whether it's a good decision or a bad decision, how that would impact others around them, including their family. But to answer your question, yes, that is men bottle stuff up. I remember as a child, I had a lot of anger issues as a young man. I had a similar story to what you shared with your dad. I was being bullied at a school, and I think I was maybe third grade, fourth grade, something like that. But I was being bullied at a school, and my dad had come by to pick me up, and we were down. I had walked down the street, and there was these group of kids, and there's one in particular that was messing with me, and his friends were kind of around, and my dad pulled up, and I look over and I'm relieved, because now my dad's here and I can get away from these guys.
Yeah.
My dad said, no. Handle it. And I'm like, what? Yeah, handle it. We're not going, I'll sit right here, but handle it. And he literally made me fight. And it was just, he wasn't doing it to be mean. He was just trying to teach me, how to learn self-defense. He was trying to teach me those things. Yeah. That's a little sidebar. But yeah, men do bottle stuff up. And I remember as a child that I went to a therapist because I used to bottle stuff up. And the therapist taught me, you got to get stuff out. Even if it's on paper, you got to get stuff out on paper. Write it down, write your thoughts, write your feelings down. And that's, that was really where I learned about journaling, was when I was a little kid. It wasn't until later in life that I really started to journal my thoughts and everything, just to keep me sane, because we go through so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that story. And I am sorry that impacted you, that you went through that, but knowing that he was such a good man and did raise you right, and you had a good, strong family around you, I think is what helped you navigate to the direction or the life you have now.
Absolutely. One thing, not to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, go
I
ahead.
know this is a dad up podcast, but I will shout out my mom because she was a praying mom. I mean, growing up, I remember oftentimes she'd have a friend over, they'd be praying till well after midnight. The one, if you were to say, what's the one image you remember of your mom, it would be in this certain chair praying over me, my life, my
Oh,
friends.
that's awesome.
And we had a home that was always open. I mean, all through high school, my door was never unlocked. My friends would be there when I got home. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? But that was my mom. And she had a board in her wall where kind of one of those like pin boards, and you can put pictures in them on our pantry wall. And it was all of our friends. She'd put their picture up there, and that was her prayer board. And I had friends, they wanted to get their picture up on that board so that my mom would be praying. So she kind of became a mom to all of our friends too. And so again, I know this is the Dad Up podcast, but because of my story, a praying mom behind the scenes was a huge factor in my life too. That was massive. That kept me where I'm at. And so just one shout out to my mom, who had to take on double duty from 13 on, which is not easy to be the only boy in a house at 13 and your mom trying to navigate that. So
that's awesome. Well, shout out to Mama Buckner. Very cool. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit, kind of go a different direction, because I think this is an important topic too. I mean, you're in the fitness space, and you really help not just people, but parents in particular, get fit. How did that transition happen? Because I know that's not necessarily what you were doing before, and now you and your wife have kind of taken on this journey. That's a huge risk, especially when you have a family, to just kind of navigate and just go a different direction in your careers. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So yeah, like I said, I was in vocational church ministry for about 15, 16 years. And in 2012, my wife and I, we started a church. They call it church planting for those that aren't in that world. And a lot of times, people who do that have a backing of a bigger church and maybe financial support. We did not have all that. The church that my wife and I met at was also a church plant, a startup church. And so it wasn't huge. So they didn't have the financial capital to, they could support us on a certain level, but not the way most people get the support. So we kind of had to navigate and find. So we started kind of in a living room with a group of people and just kind of built and grew from there. And in that process, I wasn't able to take on a full salary. So I was working multiple jobs. So at the time we had our second daughter, I was working a job at Starbucks. I was working the church. I did some security and some part-time teaching at my kid's school for a season. And then I also, this was the fun one, is I tell people I delivered skin. And what I mean by that is if somebody had to have like a skin graft surgery, maybe they were burned and they'll take, pieces of skin and kind of graft it over in surgery. Well, I would deliver dry iced packages of these skin for the surgery, literally so I'd get up at 3 a.m, deliver this stuff. I
don't even know how someone gets that job.
I don't even know. Somebody who was connected to us did it. And so like literally they dry ice package this stuff. I'd walk it in, the doctors would sign for it. It was interesting. But so I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to do that. I'm going to Starbucks. I'm teaching kids school. I'm still trying to do our church. All that to say is burnout was a real thing. And we're about 2 years into this church plant. And honestly, it's when I tell people I was probably at the lowest and darkest personally I've ever been. I'm obviously a person of faith. And so at that time though, I'm, only time for me, I'm reading my Bible or doing any personal relationship stuff with God is to prep for a sermon, because I have to preach on Sunday. So I'm depleted spiritually. I'm depleted mentally. My marriage, we tell people at that time, we felt like really good roommates. Just because we just had our second baby, and we're navigating young children, multiple jobs, all these things that never making enough, feeling like you're stuck financially. And then all this, the church wasn't growing the way I wanted it to grow. And because here's the thing, nobody starts anything hoping it doesn't grow. Everybody hopes, whether it's you're starting a business, starting a church, starting anything, you want it to grow. and it just wasn't happening the way we thought. And so I'm taking that personally, feeling like I'm failing because I can't provide financially more for our family, failing because I'm not showing up the way I want to for my kids, failing because my marriage, we just feel like we're passing in the night, and failing because I can't grow this church. So I must be a terrible leader. All of that impacted my physical health. So during that time, I probably put on a 40 extra pounds. I'm not a tall guy. So 5'8.5", 5'9", and well over 200 pounds is not a healthy partnership. And so I mean, and that honestly impacted my marriage as well. It impacted our intimacy. It impacted everything. And here's the thing too, going back a little bit to my dad, I remember when my dad did what he did, I said to myself, I will never do that to my family or my kids. I'll never abandon them and leave them. So fast forward, now we're 2013, 14-ish, planted this church, 2 kids, and I feel like I'm at the lowest point I've ever been. And in my mind, I'm like, and suicide's not an option because I said I'd never do that. So I'm just stuck in this mess. And we got to the point, we had some friends we were watching that we had done life with in the past. They had moved to Arizona as well. And we're watching them online and we're seeing this transformation take place. They're losing weight. They're getting into Orange Theory and working out. And we're like, this is not the people we used to know. What are they doing? And finally, now my wife is pregnant with our 3rd kid. And we saw their story and we said, hey, we can't control a lot of the things going on in our life right now. I couldn't control. I was working multiple jobs. I was doing whatever I could to earn. I couldn't control earning more money. I couldn't control the growth of our church. I couldn't control a lot of things were out of control in our life, but we said, hey, we can control what we're eating and what we're doing to our bodies. So let's do this. And we joined this program and it had a tremendous impact on me personally, both of us. But because of the nature of what our program is a very disciplined, when you eat, how much you eat, it's all done for you. So it's great, but you have to eat at certain times. It counts, many people are into fitness stuff, understand like macro counting and all that stuff. Our program does that for you. So it was easy to do the program, but what it does is it makes you structure your day so that you can eat properly, so you can eat on time, all the things you need to do. Well, what it did for me is it made me start with my morning routine and say, okay, how am I going to get up in the morning? Because I was the guy who would get up, grab my coffee first thing, turn on Sports Center, and just sit there till the kids woke up. And so like, I'm literally giving up what I consider to be one of the most important parts of the day. And so I explain to people, I'm starting my day tired. And then I have a toddler and a newborn, and she's pregnant with another one. Like starting your day tired with young babies is not the smartest thing to do. And so it made me restructure my entire day to where how I wake up in the morning. And so I tell people, like, I believe that spiritual health and physical health are completely tied together. That, when you think about our soul, right? Like our body, mind, spirit, like you don't separate. If you have a mental health problem, it's going to impact your relational health. It impacts everything else. And so it's like, you've got to take care of these things. And for me, it was taking care of my physical health first, impacted the way I do spiritual disciplines, the way I do, the way I attack my day, the way I approach my day. And this was over 8 years ago when we first started our program. And for 8 years, most of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, my morning routine has not changed. And that's been a huge impact to my day. So losing weight and getting to a healthy weight, and then pursuing fitness, pursuing excellence, not perfect. I mean, I'm not going out to do fitness competitions, and that's great if somebody does, but that's not my goal. It's just, how can I daily pursue physically my best, which impacts my spiritual health. It's impacted our financial health. Because I just believe when you get healthy in one area, it's that whole idea of like winning, right? It's contagious, and you like the feeling of it. Like when you're successful, it's like, oh, that feels good. What did I do to be successful? And I just began to put the same principles we put with our health. What if I were to attack my finances the same way, and we're able to get out of debt and save money? And, that's coming from years where if we went on vacation, it was because somebody gave us a gift or paid for it. That was the only way we'd go on vacation. So to be able to get in a financial healthy space, relationally, we began to look at our marriage and be like, what if we put the same disciplines? How are we intentional with our marriage. And we put all those same intentionality to our health, spiritually, physically, relationally. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And in the process, my wife first started doing what we do now, coaching. And it was my sister and my mom both wanted to do the program we were doing. And
That's
my
awesome.
wife was like, well, okay, I'll help them out. I don't know what I'm doing, but I guess we'll do this together. Well, and one by one, somebody said, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? So my wife really started it. And then the company we're affiliated with, they do a yearly convention, and I went to one, and I fell in love with the people, the community, the leadership development. Like, we do leadership trainings, and it helped me personally grow, and opened me up to personal growth strategies in a whole new way. That's what it did for us. And so I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with helping people find breakthrough finally, instead of feeling discouraged of the yo-yo dieting and all that kind of stuff. And so that's why we just love to do it. And we have seen it has impacted marriages. And so we help everybody, but I love seeing men take back their health physically, because I just believe when a man is physically healthy, and then in turn, it bleeds down to their spiritual health, their mental health, their relational health. It impacts their entire family. Mm-hmm. And a healthy dad is gonna lead a healthy family, and that impacts future generations. So that's really what I love about it.
That's really cool. I absolutely agree. I'm a firm believer in, I call it the foundation, right? So in your family, in your home life, if the foundation of your home has a crack in it, it's going to make the walls of your house unstable, right? Yeah. The same thing with your family. If in your family, the foundation of your family, if there's a crack in it, things are going to be impacted that could hurt the family. And then that transitions outside the house as well. Well, the same applies to you and your body. We're talking about men in particular, but men becoming physically fit and taking care of their health. And that transitions out into the family and then into your business and all those different areas. So yeah, I completely agree that, our body is our foundation. And then if our foundation of our body doesn't have cracks in it, then ultimately we're going to be in a better situation in our family. We're going to be in a better situation in our business. It's just a natural occurrence. If you're not healthy, if there's cracks in your foundation of your body, if there's cracks in the foundation of your body, it's going to impact your family. It's going to impact the things that you do, the activities that you do. It's going to impact your business, because now you're tired, you don't have the energy, or you're stressed out at work. All those different areas are going to be impacted. So
I 100% agree.
Yeah, 100% agree. I absolutely love that.
Well, and I, you think about, even if you work I'm fortunate with what we do, can work from home. So it benefits us, because one of our priorities is our kids and being involved in their stuff. But it impacts if you work in an office or a business where you have to go into a meeting. If you're showing up, like I said, you're waking up tired, and then you're approaching your day where you're already frustrated, struggling, stressed out, and then you have to go in a meeting and lead people, like that impacts, right? Like they'll say, like, if you're cut, you're going to bleed all over those that are around you. Or, I've heard the phrase hurt people, right? Like, if we have things we haven't dealt with, that bleeds out onto other people, whether we're leading them, and often it's our family, because they're the closest to us. But even to your point, a big, huge why for us is our kids, and being fully present in their lives. And we were just talking about, because my son, he's starting they started a new school last year, and he's playing football this year going in. And I've coached him in football and baseball for years.
That's awesome.
And I asked him, I said, hey, I'm supposed to meet with the athletic director, and they have an assistant coach opportunity. Do you want me to? Because I always like, if you don't want me out there, like, I don't want to put that stress on you. And I was like, do you want me? He goes, no, like, I love it. That's cool. Like, if you want to be out there, that's fine. And he goes, I'm not like not playing if you're not going to be out there, but like, I like you out there. That's cool. And my daughter, who's my middle daughter, who plays softball, she goes, no, you need to coach. She goes, it's normal for me to see you on the field. It's weird if you're in the stands, but I thought that was actually cool that's how they see me, on the field with them. And I was like, if that's all I did was just showed up for them, then I'm doing pretty good.
Uh,
But my physical health has a huge impact on that because it has opened the door for me to be able to be present and do those things.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. And you know, you're leading by example. You know, you had an example that you know, left your life fairly young. And now you're leading your kids by example, by you being present and you being intentional with your time with them. And I love that you're asking their permission to coach, because that's important. We need to let our kids be independent and make their own decisions to a certain extent, to make their
Yeah.
own decisions. And that's one of them. I did that with my boys often. And I coached them from 4 years old all the way up through high school. And that was questions that I asked them. Do you want me to coach? Do you want me to coach? And it was this kind of the same response. If you want to coach, cool. If you don't, it's fine with me too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so that's awesome. John, I want to let you go, but before we do, I want to ask you, you know, if my listeners, viewers want to look you up, learn a little bit more about you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Instagram's probably the best. I mean, I have Facebook too, but Instagram, it's just at John Buckner is the easiest one. That's where I'm spend most of my time. But yeah, that's and it and I mean, we have Instagram, they can find all our websites, different things like that. That's where I spend most of my time though, because they could fill out forms, they could connect with me, but I like connecting personally. So even a DM on Instagram, I'd love to chat with people and just connect with them. And you know, and honestly, like my goal is just to add value to some other dad trying to figure this thing out, because parenting didn't come with a playbook. And everything's a new season, right? Like I'm parenting my 8-year-old daughter differently than my 13-year-old son now. And
Right.
we're learning those things sometimes as we go. I will say the benefit, my wife and I both, we are both people that have the mentality is like, if I can learn from your mistakes so I don't have to make it, that's been a huge impact in our marriage, because she experienced a divorce with her parents when she was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we got married, she'd seen her dad was married and divorced 3 different times, and her mom the same. So she'd seen essentially 6 different divorces.
Mm-hmm.
That coupled with me going through what I went through, that's a recipe for people saying, yeah, that's a marriage that's not going to make it. So one of the greatest, I don't know, joys of my life is when people are shocked when they hear our story, because they're like, I never would have thought you guys, that's something you went through. And the reason I find joy in that is because I'm like, yeah, we've put in the work to make this marriage intentional. That our stories in the past, they influence and help us navigate, but they don't define who we are. Though we've seen some, you know, we've experienced the shrapnel of some damage that's gone on in our lives personally, it doesn't have to define. And I'd say that to dads, man, like whether it's addictions, whether it's struggles, whatever it is, it doesn't have to define who you are. That we get to pick up the pen and write the story of the dads we want to be. And that can start at any time. It might take some healing and some forgiveness, but we get to make that choice. Kind of like I was going back saying to my son, teaching him, we take personal responsibility and we get to choose the dads we want to be, the men we want to be, and the leaders we want to be. And so that's hopefully, if people find me and follow me, that's hopefully the value they get, is that we get to create our lives.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, 15 years of marriage, or 15 years together, is awesome. I'll tell you this, for 26 years being with my wife, being married to my wife, almost 28 years being together, it takes work all the way up until year 26. It takes work. And that's something my wife and I do regularly. We have a marriage coach that we go see every other month. We go and sit down with our marriage coach. She's a licensed therapist. We do that so we don't have problems. And it helps us navigate, you know, still being connected. That was important to us. My wife and I want to continue to have a love and relationship and be connected and be the role models for our boys when they do someday go off and get married. And so we're just like you guys. I mean, we're all in when it comes to being committed to each other. But it takes work every single day. It takes work. And that's no different than being a parent. You being a parent, it takes work every single day. You have to be intentional with being a parent. And if that's not you, then I'm not sure why God loaned you his kids, because if you didn't want to be an intentional parent, I'm really not sure why God loaned you his kids. Maybe he's trying to teach you something. Maybe he's trying to help you grow up. Maybe he's trying to help you mature and navigate this thing called parenting. But Anyways, that's my little sidebar. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. Listen, guys, he's a good dude and he's got a good family. He's got a great story, obviously. And he's really checking the boxes when it comes to being a great husband, a great father, a great family man, a great friend, a great business owner. He's really checking all those boxes. So if you want to get some sort of motivation or help, or just have questions, please reach out to John because he's really good on Instagram. He will answer you back. He will respond back to you. So please reach out to him if you have questions. If you're interested in the program that they're in, check him out. I would highly encourage you to do that because he's a good guy. John, thank you very much for being a good friend of mine. I can't wait to get out to Arizona again to break bread together, brother. I'm really looking forward to that. But I appreciate everything about you and look forward to continuing our friendship. So thanks for being on, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor. And I just appreciate you. You've inspired me for a while now. So it's really cool just to get this chance to sit down, and definitely when you're here, let me know, because dinner on me, coffee on me, whatever we got to do. I just want to hang out. So that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, again, it's been another exciting episode of Dad Up. I want to thank my good friend, John Buckner. Again, please make sure you're checking him out on Instagram. You can find all his links there. You can find the links in the show notes as well. But if you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the awesome guests that I have on each and every week. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at Dad Up Podcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.